Hi and welcome to Tales from the Gulag. Today's the 22nd of April, and before I go on with my thought for the day, I might like to follow up on my tally of damages from the CCP virus. On further reflection, since my last video, I thought that one may not be such a great idea. It's a bit too much personal information over the internet, if you know what I mean. But let me just say that since the 26th of March or thereabouts, I estimate lost piano teaching, plus if I put, say, a $5 per incident at work arising from having to implement the distancing policies, I would estimate the loss so far to be about $2,000 over roughly a month. Now, that doesn't mention losses to superannuation, which on paper amounts to tens of thousands of dollars. I'll let you do the arithmetic with that. And again, there are plenty that are worse off for me, and I am thankful that I at least have some steady work, because people do, after all, have to eat. It's just multiply the losses of one bloke by millions and millions of people around the world, and it would make a pretty hefty reparations bill for the Chinese Communist Party, the enablers of the CCP virus. Now, I wanted to have a think about the proposed app put forward by the Morrison government to enable us to be tracked as a means to fight the CCP virus. And at the moment, I would have to say no thanks. Once upon a time, leprosy was a much feared disease, especially in the Middle East. It was highly contagious, and it led to pretty grotesque disfigurement due to the injuries that one might occur, because leprosy, the disease, attacked the nervous system, so that the victim couldn't feel any injuries done to them, and they would just, get infected, and the limb or whatever would just rot away. Well, in those days, an extreme form of social distancing was put into place by the laws of Moses, going back to the Old Testament. A victim of leprosy was cut off from the worshipping community, and they had to go off by themselves until it was cleared up. When they thought they had been cured, they were then to go to the priest, who would examine them, and if possible, they were declared clean and everything would be okay. They would then have to go and make a thanks offering to God for their cure. But meanwhile, if they went back into town, they would have to call out, "Unclean, unclean," to warn people that they were coming, so that others could avoid contact with them. The proposed app, if uploaded, allows us to be tracked, so that if we are near somebody who has the virus, we know that there is a risk, and so we can avoid getting too close to them. Much has yet to be explained, but this, I gather, is what it is all about. It is sold as a way to end our social distancing policies sooner rather than later. While it is meant to be strictly voluntary, the idea is that enough people will need to take it up, or else the isolation will need to go on a bit longer, or else it just won't work. I, for one, say no thank you, and I don't intend to take it up if I can help it. And here is why. 1. The world has paid the WHO, the World Health Organization, billions of dollars for advice that my mother could have given us for free. If you are sick, stay at home. If you are sick, keep some distance from others, use a hanky if you have to cough or sneeze, wash your hands. And further, closing our borders was a good move, except I suppose for the fiascos surrounding the cruise ships like the Ruby Princess, which actually helped to import the virus, unfortunately. And then quarantining the sick is a good, time-tested method of dealing with an epidemic. And while we want to protect the elderly, since they are vulnerable, that is also a good move. But shutting them off from family and loved ones for a protracted and uncertain length of time would have to be a surefire recipe to bring on dementia, wouldn't it? But what do we have? Here are plenty of examples of little Hitlers out there who have tried to turn this into a personal power trip for the real control freaks that do exist out there. Examples: no golf, hardly a contact sport. In fact, if you get too close to someone who is about to take a swing, you'd probably end up with a face full of golf club. Not a great idea. No fishing? What's that got to do with containing a virus? Police operating drones in national parks so that they can ferry out the naughty people who want to get out of their homes and go out and enjoy some bush and some isolation. My mother also used to tell you that if you were sick, usually fresh air, sunshine and exercise were usually good for you. The classic to me is the video of a jogger in, I assume it was the United States, who was enjoying his fresh air and exercise along the beach when this cop tries to run him down to stop him, except that in this case the jogger could actually outrun the cop. Or there's the British dad who wanted to play catch with the kids out in his backyard, you know, the fresh air and exercise. The fun police put paid to that one. There has to be a point where prolonged solitary confinement is considered to be psychological torture. In Australia, some states have been harsher than others in their restrictions, and here it seems to me that the standout state has been the People's Republic of Victoria. People have not liked having to distance themselves, and yes, it has been a pain in the butt dealing with this stuff at work in the supermarket, but by and large, we have grinned and borne it for the sake of the cause, only to find that restrictions that have nothing to do with disease control are too much to swallow. We have to seriously question whether the cure is worse than the disease. 3. The CCP virus and its distancing measures has been a boon for those little Hitlers among our politicians and bureaucrats. And this is why I'm not interested in the app to track my whereabouts. There are some who like to say, well, I've got nothing to hide, and so what's the problem? Well, the problem is those little Hitlers out there that can and do use personal data and information for nefarious purposes and for even illegal purposes. I can remember many emergency government measures that were imposed to relieve a situation which, while that situation has passed, those emergency measures are still with us. Even if ScoMo, Scott Morrison, was genuine in his intent on this one, the temptation is too great for subsequent governments to learn to like this measure too much. That said, I would need to have some questions answered if ScoMo wants to sell it to me. How necessary is it, given that the measures that we have had in place, even the milder versions of these distancing measures, well, they seem to have been effective. So do we really need it? What measures are there that the information gathered is only going to be used for a stated purpose? How will the government gauge that information is no longer needed? How do you tell when the emergency is over and they no longer need that personal data? Will that data then be destroyed when it is no longer needed? Answer these ones and they may be in for a shot to change my mind. Meanwhile, I have had enough experience to know that the power trippers out there can and do use our personal data for nefarious and illegal ends. So for now, I'm not interested in your app.